When Yu Lihua opened her eyes in the physician's quarters and could not remember her own name, she understood immediately that she had lost something more precious than memory itself. She had lost the man whose face she saw bending over her, eyes red-rimmed with sleeplessness, and the way his hand trembled as it touched her forehead told her that whoever she had been loved. What she wanted, with a ferocity that surprised even her emptied mind, was to deserve that look again, to earn back what her former self had possessed, though she did not yet know if the woman she had been was someone worth becoming. The physician said she had fallen from her horse 3 days prior, that she had struck her head on a stone, that her husband, the man with the trembling hands, had not left her side. Her husband's name was Chen Bowu, and he was a military strategist in service to the provincial governor. These facts were delivered to her like gifts she did not know how to unwrap. "Lihua," Chen Bowu said, and his voice broke on the second syllable. "Do you truly not know me?" She looked at his face, which was handsome in a severe way, all sharp planes and serious eyes. She looked at his hands, which were ink-stained and elegant. She felt nothing but a distant pity for his pain, and a closer shame that she could not manufacture what he so desperately needed from her. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. He nodded slowly, as if he had expected this but had hoped otherwise. "The physician says the memory may return. We must be patient." "Tell me," she said. "Tell me who I am." And so he did, in a voice carefully controlled, sitting beside her sleeping mat as autumn light filtered through the paper windows. He told her that she was 24 years old, that they had been married for 3 years, that she was the daughter of the Yu family who owned the largest textile workshop in Yuezhou. He told her that she was clever and quick-tempered, and that she played the guqin beautifully. He told her that she had fallen from her horse while riding to meet him after he had been away for 2 months on a military campaign. What he did not tell her, she would learn later, was how to feel about any of it. Her family came the next day, and it was in their presence that Lihua first understood what she had lost. There were 4 of them. Her father, Yu Genting, round-faced and soft-spoken. Her mother, Madame Yu, who wept openly and without shame. Her older brother, Yu Kang, who tried to joke and failed. And her younger sister, Yu Mingyu, who crawled onto the sleeping mat beside her and held her hand with a fierceness that spoke of genuine terror barely contained. "Don't cry, Mama," Lihua said, though she did not remember this woman as her mother, could not feel the tug of filial affection she knew she should feel. "I'm still here." "But are you?" Madame Yu said. And this question, raw and afraid, was more honest than anything Chen Bowu had offered. Her father took a different approach. He sat across from her and began to tell stories. Not grand tales, but small domestic memories. The time Lihua had dyed all of Mingyu's hair ribbons indigo by accident. The way she used to steal sweet rice cakes from the kitchen and blame the family dog. How she had taught herself to read by stealing her brother's lessons when the tutor wasn't looking. Lihua listened and tried to recognize herself in these anecdotes. She could not, but she could see how her father's eyes crinkled when he spoke, how her mother leaned into him unconsciously, how Mingyu laughed at a punchline Lihua had forgotten. She could see that this family loved each other in an easy, unguarded way, and that she had been part of that warmth. "I want to go home," she said suddenly. Chen Bowu, who had been standing near the door, stiffened. "You are coming home, to our home." "I mean to my family's home," Lihua said, and saw him flinch as if struck, just for a little while, to remember. There was a long silence. Her father and Chen Bowu exchanged a look that Lihua could not interpret. Finally, her husband nodded. "Of course," he said, "whatever you need." And so she went home to the Yu family compound, to the rooms she had grown up in, and tried to excavate a self from the debris of lost history. Her sister Mingyu barely left her side, chattering endlessly about their childhood, pointing out objects and places with the desperate energy of someone trying to rebuild a bridge with her bare hands. Lihua learned that she had embroidered the cushion on her window seat, that she had carved her initials into the courtyard plum tree, that she had a particular fondness for jasmine tea and a particular hatred for early mornings. She learned these things, but she did not remember them. Each fact was inert, disconnected. She was reading the diary of a stranger. Her brother Yu Kang took a quieter approach. He would come to her room in the evenings and play Weiqi with her. And after the first game, when he had thoroughly beaten her. He looked puzzled. "You're playing differently," he said. "I don't remember how I used to play." "You were aggressive, reckless even. You would sacrifice pieces without hesitation if you saw a path to victory." He gestured at the board. This was cautious, defensive. Lihua looked down at the stones. "Maybe I'm a different person now." "Maybe," Yukong said, and his expression was troubled. "But Bowu won't want a different person, he'll want his wife back." This observation settled into Lihua's chest like a stone. She knew it was true. Chen Bowu visited every 3 days, always bringing gifts, books, sweets, flowers. He would sit with her in the garden and tell her stories about their courtship, their wedding, their married life. He was unfailingly patient and kind, and Lihua felt suffocated by his devotion, because the woman he described, brilliant, passionate, demanding, was not someone Lihua recognized or particularly wanted to become. The Lihua of his stories rode horses too fast and argued with generals, and once threw a plate at his head during an argument about Confucian philosophy. She sounded exhausting. "Was I happy?" Lihua asked him once. Chen Bowu considered this. "You were fierce. You were alive. You made me better than I am. But was I happy?" He looked away. "I hoped you were." It was not an answer, and they both knew it. 3 weeks after Lihua returned to her family home, another visitor arrived. His name was Wei Juwen, and he was, she was told, an old friend of the family. He was a merchant who traded in silk and tea, and he had known Lihua since childhood. Yukong brought him to the garden where Lihua was attempting to learn the guqin, an instrument her mother insisted she had once played masterfully, though her current fumbling attempts suggested otherwise. "I heard you were ill," Wei Juwen said, after the initial bows and pleasantries. "I wanted to see for myself that you were recovering." Lihua studied him. He was perhaps 30, with an open, pleasant face and laugh lines around his eyes. There was something comfortable about him, undemanding. "I'm recovered in body," she said. "My mind is another matter." Yukong explained. He settled onto the bench across from her. "That must be frightening." It was such a simple observation, but no one else had named it so plainly. Chen Bowu spoke of hope and patience. Her family spoke of love and memory. Only Wei Juwen acknowledged that she might be afraid. "Yes," she said, and felt something in her chest loosen. "Yes, it is." He visited again 2 days later, and then again, and soon his presence became a regular feature of her days. He did not tell her stories about who she had been. Instead, he talked to her about who she was now, asked her opinions on poetry and politics, taught her card games she may or may not have once known, walked with her through the marketplace and let her discover her own preferences for persimmons over pears, silk over cotton, blue over green. "You're different with him," Mingyu observed one evening as she helped Lihua prepare for bed. "You smile more. He doesn't need me to be someone I'm not." Her sister was quiet for a long moment, braiding Lihua's hair with careful fingers. "Bowu loves you very much." "I know. He's a good man. I know that too. But you don't love him." Lihua closed her eyes. "I don't know him. How can I love him?" "You did before," Mingyu said softly. "Everyone could see it. You looked at him the way Mama looks at Papa, like he was the center of the world." This information should have comforted her. Instead, it felt like an obligation she could not meet, a debt owed by her former self that her current self had no means to repay. Chen Bowu must have sensed her growing distance, because his visits became more frequent, his gifts more elaborate. He brought her a jade bracelet that had belonged to his mother. He commissioned a painting of the two of them on their wedding day. He recited poetry he had written for her during their courtship, beautiful verses full of longing and devotion. Lihua accepted these offerings with gracious words and a heart that remained stubbornly unmoved. She felt like an imposter, a woman wearing another woman's face, expected to fulfill another woman's promises. It was Wei Juwen who finally gave voice to what she was feeling. They were walking along the river one autumn afternoon, watching boats drift past, when he said, "You feel guilty." "Yes." "Because you cannot become who you were." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, watching the water. "May I tell you something about the Lihua I knew?" She nodded, bracing herself for another story about the stranger she used to be. "She was magnificent," Wei Juwen said. "Brilliant and fierce and utterly uncompromising. She was also often unhappy. Lihua turned to look at him, startled. She wanted things she could not have, he continued, his voice careful. She wanted to be taken seriously in a world that saw her only as an ornament. She wanted her mind to be valued as much as her face. She married Chen Bowu because he was one of the few men who seemed to see her intelligence, who would debate with her as an equal. Then why was she unhappy? Wei Zhiwen met her eyes, and in his expression, she saw something she had not expected. A deep, quiet sadness. Because seeing someone's brilliance is not the same as understanding their heart. Chen Bowu admired your mind. I don't know that he ever understood your happiness. And you did? He smiled, and it did not reach his eyes. I tried to, but you never looked at me the way you looked at him. The confession hung between them like an autumn leaf, slowly falling. Lihua understood suddenly and completely what he was telling her. Wei Zhiwen had loved her, perhaps still loved her, but had never spoken it because she had loved someone else. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. His voice was firm. I am telling you this not to burden you, but to free you. You are not obligated to become who you were, Lihua. That woman made her choices. You are allowed to make different ones. Even if it hurts people I'm told I loved, even then. She thought about this conversation for days afterward, turning it over in her mind like a puzzle box. She thought about the woman she had been, fierce, unhappy, married to a man who admired her, but perhaps did not understand her. She thought about the woman she was now, cautious, uncertain, but not unhappy. She thought about what she owed to a past she could not remember. Her mother found her in the garden one morning, staring at nothing. You're troubled, Madame Yu said, settling beside her. I don't know what to do. About your husband. Yes. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. Your father and I were matched by a matchmaker. We had met 3 times before our wedding. I did not love him. Lihua looked at her in surprise. Her parents' affection for each other was evident in every interaction, easy and warm. But now you do. Now I do, her mother agreed. But it took time. It took choosing each other every day, until the choosing became habit and the habit became love. She took Lihua's hand. You are afraid that because you do not remember loving him, you cannot love him again. But child, in the first time, you fell into love without meaning to. This time, you could choose it deliberately. And if I choose not to? Her mother's eyes were sad, but not unkind. Then you choose not to. Love cannot be commanded, not even love you once felt. That evening, Chen Bowu came to visit, and Lihua asked him to walk with her. They went to the same riverside path where she had walked with Wei Zhiwen, and she wondered if this was deliberate on her part, some unconscious attempt to compare the 2 men. I need to ask you something truthful, she said, and I need you to answer honestly, not with what you think I want to hear. Chen Bowu nodded, his expression wary. Before the accident, was I happy? He did not answer immediately. They walked in silence for several minutes, and Lihua watched him struggle with his own honesty. I thought you were, he finally said. You were passionate, engaged with life. You laughed often, but... He paused. There were times when I would find you staring out windows with such sadness in your eyes, and when I asked what troubled you, you would say nothing and smile, and I would let it rest because I did not want to argue. What do you think I was sad about? I don't know. His voice was raw. I thought if I loved you enough, gave you enough freedom to pursue your interests, respected your intelligence, I thought that would be sufficient. But there was some part of you I never reached, some room you never let me enter. Lihua felt a sudden overwhelming pity for this man, who had loved her former self so completely without ever fully knowing her. And now you are different. He stopped walking, turned to face her, softer perhaps, more uncertain. You look at me without that wall behind your eyes. He reached out, then dropped his hand without touching her. Part of me thinks if you could fall in love with me like this, without the weight of whatever disappointed you before, we might actually be happy. But that's a selfish thought, isn't it? Preferring you diminished if it means you might love me. It's honest, Lihua said. That's worth something. Is it worth enough? She did not know how to answer that. 2 days later, Wei Zhiwen came to say goodbye. He was leaving for Chang'an on business, would be gone for several months. I wanted to see you before I left, he said. They were in the garden again, the same bench where they had spent so many afternoons. Lihua had grown comfortable with his silences, the way he did not need her to perform or remember or be anything other than what she was. "I'll miss our conversations," she said, "and I yours." He hesitated, then said, "Chen Bowu came to see me yesterday." Lihua felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Did he? He asked me if I had feelings for you." I told him the truth. "Which was? That I have loved you for 10 years, and that loving you has only ever meant wanting your happiness, even when it did not include me." Wei Juwen's voice was steady, but his hands were not. "He asked if I thought you could be happy with him. I said I did not know, that only you could answer that." "What did he say?" "He said he was afraid the answer was no, and that he did not know if he could bear it." Wei Juwen met her eyes. "Lihua, I am going to say something, and then I'm going to leave, and I will not mention it again when I return. May I?" She nodded, though her heart was beating too fast. "You do not owe your former self anything, not her choices, not her loves, not her life. If you choose Chen Bowu, choose him because you want him, not because you once did. And if you do not choose him," he swallowed. "If you do not choose him, there are others who would count themselves blessed beyond measure to be chosen." He left before she could respond, and Lihua sat in the garden as the sun set, thinking about choice and obligation and the weight of a love she could not remember feeling. Her father found her there after dark, brought her a cup of tea, and sat beside her without speaking. Yu Genting had a gift for comfortable silence, for presence without pressure. "Papa," Lihua finally said, "how did you know Mama was the right choice?" "I didn't," he said simply. "I chose her because the matchmakers said we would suit, and because I liked her smile, the knowing that she was right. That came later, slowly, like watching dawn break." "What if dawn never comes?" "Then you chose wrong, and you make different choices going forward." He patted her hand. "You are trying to solve this like a puzzle, child. Love is not a puzzle, it is a garden. You plant seeds and tend them and hope for blooms, but you cannot force the growing." That night, Lihua could not sleep. She rose and walked through the silent house, and found herself in the room where her belongings from her married home had been stored. There were boxes of books, clothing, personal items. She began to go through them, hoping for some spark of recognition, some emotional connection to the woman who had owned these things. She found the inkstone first, a beautiful piece, carved black stone with a dragon motif. It was well used, ink-stained, precious. Beside it was a stack of letters, and Lihua opened them without thinking. They were love letters, not from Chen Bowu to her, but from her to him. She recognized her own handwriting, but not the sentiments. The letters were passionate, full of philosophical debates and poetry and longing. They spoke of a man who challenged her, who saw her mind as her greatest beauty, who made her feel alive. She read them all, and with each one, she felt the ghost of the woman she had been. This Lihua had been in love, truly and deeply. But as the letters progressed chronologically, something shifted. The passion was still there, but a new note entered. Frustration. She wrote about feeling unseen in certain ways, about how Chen Bowu would debate with her for hours about military strategy, but grew uncomfortable when she spoke about her fears or sadness, how he wanted her brilliance, but not her vulnerability. The last letter was dated 2 weeks before her accident, and it was not addressed to Chen Bowu. It was addressed to Wei Juwen, and it had never been sent. "My dear friend," it began, and Lihua's hands trembled as she read. "I am writing to you because you are the only one who has ever asked me not what I think, but how I feel, and you are the only one who seems to understand that these are different questions. I fear I have made a terrible mistake. I married a man who loves my mind but is frightened by my heart, and I am so very tired of only being half seen. When you look at me, I feel whole. When he looks at me, I feel like a prized possession, valuable but not quite real. I do not know what to do with this knowledge. I do not know if I'm being foolish or honest. I only know that I cannot send this letter because you have never asked anything of me, and I will not burden you with feelings you did not seek. But I needed to write it anyway, to make it real, to admit to myself what I have been afraid to admit. I think I may have loved the wrong man." Lihua set down the letter with shaking hands. The woman she had been had known. She had known she was unhappy, had known where her heart truly lay, but had been too honorable or too frightened to act on it. And then she had fallen from her horse and forgotten everything, and been given a chance to choose again. The next morning, Lihua asked her father to summon both Chen Bowu and Wei Juwen. Wei Juwen protested that he was preparing to leave for Chang'an, but her father was persuasive. They came in the afternoon, and Lihua received them in the garden, where she had spent so many hours excavating her former self. She had them sit, and she stood, because she needed to say this on her feet. "I found something last night," she said, and withdrew the unsent letter. "It was written by the woman I was, and it tells me something I did not know." Chen Bowu's face had gone pale. Wei Juwen looked stricken. "I have been trying so hard to remember who I was," Lihua continued, her voice steady though her hands were not. "I have been asking everyone to tell me stories, to help me find myself. But the truth is, I am not that woman anymore. I may never be her again. And I have been thinking of this as a loss, as something stolen from me." She looked at Chen Bowu, and her heart ached for him, for his grief and his love and his fear. "Bowu, you loved a woman who was brilliant and fierce, and who, I think, loved you in return. But you loved each other incompletely. You loved her mind but not her vulnerability. She loved your respect but could not reach your heart. And perhaps, given time, you would have learned to bridge that gap. Or perhaps you would have spent a lifetime being almost happy, almost understood." "Lihua," he started, but she held up a hand. "Let me finish, please." She took a breath. "I do not know if I can be happy with you. I do not remember loving you, and I cannot manufacture what is not there. But more than that, I am not sure the woman I am now is someone you could love. I am not fierce. I do not want to debate military strategy. I like quiet mornings and slow conversations and being asked how I feel rather than what I think. I am softer than I was. And I think you would always be waiting for your wife to return, and I would always be failing to be her." Chen Bowu's eyes were wet. "So you choose him?" Lihua turned to Wei Juwen, who looked as if he might shatter. "No," she said gently. "I do not choose him either, though I suspect the woman I was wished she could. Zhaoen, you have been so kind to me. You have loved me without demand, and you have let me be who I am without trying to shape me into who I was. But I cannot choose you out of gratitude, or because my former self wrote you a letter she was too afraid to send." "Then what are you choosing?" Wei Juwen asked, and his voice was hoarse. "I am choosing time," Lihua said. "I'm choosing to know myself first, without the weight of old obligations or old loves. I'm choosing to live as who I am now, not who I was or who I might have been." She looked at both men, these good men who had loved different versions of her. "I need to ask you both to let me go, truly let me go, not to wait for me or hope I will change my mind, but to release me from all of it. Memory, obligation, love." "And if I cannot?" Chen Bowu asked. "You are my wife." "Then I will ask for a divorce," Lihua said, and the words hurt to say, but they were true. "I will not stay in a marriage built on the foundation of someone I cannot remember being. It would not be fair to either of us." There was a long silence. A breeze moved through the garden, carrying the scent of chrysanthemums. Somewhere, a bird sang. Finally, Chen Bowu stood. He moved with the careful precision of a man holding himself together through sheer will. He approached Lihua, and for a moment she thought he might argue, might plead. Instead, he took her hand and pressed something into it. The jade bracelet he had given her, the one that had belonged to his mother. "Keep it," he said. "Not as my wife, but as someone I loved." That much was real, even if nothing else was. He bowed, formal and distant. And then he left. Lihua watched him go and felt grief, but also relief. And the relief made her feel guilty until she remembered what her father had said. Love is a garden, and you cannot force the growing. Wei Juwen still sat on the bench, his head in his hands. Lihua sat beside him and took his hand. "I do care for you," she said softly. "Very much, but you do not love me. I do not know you well enough to love you. I do not know myself well enough to love anyone." She squeezed his hand. "The woman I was loved you in secret, but she never gave either of you the chance to see what that love could become. I will not make the same mistake. I will not love in secret or out of obligation. If I come to love someone, it it will be with full knowledge and full choice. And if, after you know yourself, you find that you could love me, Lihua smiled sadly, then I will come to Chang'an and tell you so. I'll wait, he said. Don't, she said. Live your life. Be open to happiness. I will not hold you to a love I cannot yet return. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw in his eyes the same thing she had seen in Chen Bowu's. Grief, but also a reluctant understanding. He raised her hand to his lips, kissed it gently, and then he too left. Lihua sat alone in the garden as the afternoon deepened into evening, turning the jade bracelet over in her hands. She felt hollow and full at once, emptied of obligation but filled with possibility. For the first time since waking in the physician's quarters, she felt like herself. Not her former self, not a half-remembered ghost, but simply Lihua, a woman whose story was still being written. Her sister found her there as the stars began to appear. Mingyu sat beside her and leaned her head on Lihua's shoulder. Was it very hard? Mingyu asked. Yes. Are you sad? Yes, but I am also relieved. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sisters who had relearned how to be together without the weight of shared childhood memories to guide them. Will you stay with us? Mingyu finally asked. Here, in this house? For a while, Lihua said, until I know what I want to do next. And then? I don't know. Perhaps I'll learn to play the guqin. Perhaps I'll work in the family business. Perhaps I'll travel. Lihua smiled at the infinite possibility contained in those perhapses. I am 24 years old, and I have no memory, and that means I have no limits. I can become anyone. You're already someone, Mingyu said. You're my sister, that's enough. And in that moment, Lihua understood what she had been given. Not just a second chance at love or happiness, but a second chance at choice. The woman she had been had made her decisions with passion and hope, and had found herself trapped by them. The woman she was now had no such trap. She was free. The months that followed were gentle ones. Lihua learned her family business, spent long hours at the textile workshop, learning about dyes and weaving techniques. She discovered she had a good head for numbers and an eye for color. Her father began to rely on her judgment, to include her in business decisions. Her mother taught her to cook, and Lihua found unexpected peace in the rhythm of chopping vegetables and stirring pots. She did learn to play the guqin, though never as well as she was told she once had. She preferred simpler melodies now, songs that did not demand virtuosity, but invited contemplation. She played in the evenings, with her family gathered around, and felt content in a way she suspected her former self never had. Chen Bowu sent divorce papers after 2 months, handled through intermediaries with scrupulous respect and fairness. He divided their property evenly, asked for nothing back. The papers included a brief note in his elegant calligraphy. I hope you find what you're looking for. You deserved better than what I could give you. Lihua signed them and felt sorrow, but also gratitude. He had let her go. It was a final act of love, and she honored it. Wei Juan wrote from Chang'an occasionally, friendly letters full of news and observations. He did not speak of love or waiting. He told her about the architecture, the food, the strange customs. He was, Lihua thought, trying to move forward, and she was glad for it. Spring came, and with it, the busiest season at the textile workshop. Lihua threw herself into the work, negotiating contracts and managing workers. She found she was good at it, that she liked the straightforward nature of trade, the satisfaction of a deal well made. One afternoon, as she was reviewing account books, her brother Yu Kong came to find her. There's someone here to see you, he said, and something in his expression made Lihua's heart skip. It was Wei Juan, returned early from Chang'an, thinner than she remembered and windburned from travel. I tried, he said, without preamble. I tried to live my life and be open to happiness elsewhere. I tried to let you go. But you couldn't, Lihua said. And she was not sure if she felt dismay or hope. No. He smiled ruefully. But I am not here to press my suit or demand anything from you. I am here because I realized something in Chang'an. I realize that knowing you now, without the weight of your former self, has been the greatest gift of my life. And if all I ever have of you is friendship, if you never come to love me, I will still count myself blessed. Jiwen, let me finish, he said, echoing her words from months before. You said you needed time to know yourself. Have you? Do you know what you want? Lihua considered this. She thought about the woman she had been, fierce and unhappy. She thought about the woman she had become, gentler but more honest. She thought about what she had learned in these months of freedom, that she valued kindness over brilliance, that she wanted to be seen whole rather than half admired, that she could be happy with simple pleasures and steady work. I know that I'm not the woman who wrote you that letter, she said slowly. I am not secretly longing for you while trapped in another man's life. I am free, and I have been free. And in that freedom, I have discovered what I actually want. Which is? To be chosen by someone who knows all of me. Not just my mind, not just my pleasant parts. Someone who asks how I feel and means it. Someone I can be soft with, who will not mistake softness for weakness. She met his eyes. You have been showing me that person exists. You have been showing me that you could be that person. Could be, he repeated. But am not yet. No, Lihua said, because I have not let you be. I have kept you at a distance while I found myself. But Jiwen, I have found myself now. I know who I am, and knowing who I am, I find that I would like to know you better. Not as my secret love or my patient friend, but as something new, something we build together, deliberately. Hope dawned in his expression, careful and afraid. What are you saying? I am saying that I would like to try, Lihua said. Not marriage, not yet, but courtship. Real courtship, where we learn each other fresh, where you can love me as I am, not as I was, where I can come to love you with full knowledge and full choice. And if you find you cannot, then we will know honestly, and we will remain friends, and I will help you find someone else to love. She smiled. But Jiwen, I do not think that will happen. I think my former self knew something true about you. I think she saw clearly, even if she could not act on it. And I think I am finally ready to see it too. He crossed the distance between them slowly, as if approaching something precious and fragile. He took her hands in his, and Lihua felt her heart beat faster, felt something warm uncurl in her chest. Then let me court you, Wei Juan said. Let me show you how I love, when I am allowed to love openly. Let me know you, this you, the woman you have become. Yes, Lihua said. Yes to all of it. He kissed her hands, both of them, with a tenderness that made her ache. And Lihua, who had lost everything and rebuilt herself from nothing, who had chosen freedom over obligation and honesty over comfort, felt for the first time the stirrings of something that might, given time and care, become love. In the months that followed, Wei Zhiwen proved himself patient and attentive, and occasionally foolish in ways that made Lihua laugh. He brought her terrible poetry and good tea. He listened when she talked about the textile business and asked intelligent questions. He took her to markets and temples and quiet restaurants, learning her preferences, showing her his. They walked by the river and argued about philosophy, and sat in comfortable silence and slowly, carefully built something new. Lihua's family watched this courtship with approval and relief. Her mother pulled her aside once and said, You are happier than I have ever seen you, even in the memories I have of you before. I am choosing my own happiness, Lihua said. That makes all the difference. 6 months after Wei Zhiwen returned from Chang'an, he asked Lihua to marry him. They were in the garden where she had released both him and Chen Bowu, and there was symmetry in this that pleased her. I love you, he said simply. I love who you are now. I love your kindness and your practicality and the way you hum while you work. I love that you are soft without being weak and gentle without being passive. I love you deliberately and completely, and I would be honored if you would consent to be my wife. Lihua looked at this good man who had loved her without demand, who had let her go and come back, who had learned to love the woman she had become rather than mourning the woman she had been. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. And she meant it with her whole heart, this heart that was hers alone, not an echo of someone else's feelings. She loved him, had come to love him through choice and time and the slow building of trust. It was not the passionate, consuming love of her former self's letters. It was steadier, truer, built on honest foundation. They married in the spring, with both families present. Lihua wore red and gold, and when she bowed to Wei Zhiwen across the marriage altar, she felt no ghosts, no obligations to a past she could not remember. She felt only present, only alive, only certain. Chen Bowu sent a gift. An inkstone, twin to the one Lihua had found in her belongings, beautifully carved. The note with it said only, "For your new life. Write it well." Lihua kept the inkstone on her desk, and sometimes she would touch it and think about the woman she had been. That fierce, unhappy woman who had loved the wrong man beautifully and well. She felt compassion for her former self, but no longing to become her again. On her wedding night, as she and Wei Juan sat together in their new home, he said, "Do you ever wish you had your memory back, to know what you've forgotten?" Lihua thought about this seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but mostly no. I think what I forgot needed to be forgotten. I think I was given a rare gift, the chance to begin again, to choose with full knowledge who I wanted to become." "And who did you choose to become?" "Someone happy," Lihua said. "Someone honest. Someone loved by a man who sees all of me." She smiled at him. "Someone who loves him in return." Wei Juan pulled her close, and Lihua settled into his embrace with the easy comfort of someone who had found home. Outside, spring rain began to fall, gentle and steady. In the morning, there would be work to do. The textile business to run, a household to manage, a life to build. But tonight, there was only this: the quiet joy of being chosen and choosing in return, of loving without ghosts, of a future written fresh. The inkstone sat on her desk, silent witness to what had been and what was yet to come. Lihua did not know what the future held, could not predict whether there would be children or sorrow or triumph or loss. But she knew this. Whatever came, she would face it as herself, this self, the woman she had deliberately become. And she would face it beside someone who loved that woman completely. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.